Mr. Jabir, nasikika?
Yes, unasikika vizuri kabisa.
Okay. Okay. I hope my screen is visible to each and everyone. Okay. This is an area to be covered. For today's session, we'll be able to cover the introduction to database security, the method to secure a database, which are database access control, database auditing, database encryption, data encryption, backup and restoration of the data. These are just a summary of what we're going to cover. As we move on, you'll see each session, the content is included. Okay, on the introduction to database, I've been told you're a third-year student, so I hope all of us will know what is a database. But just to add a bit of it, a database is just an organized collection of structured information or data typically stored electronically in a computer system. But this data is supposed to be interrelated information, because you cannot just store information which are not interrelated. That's why it can be stored either in a computer machine, but also can be a collection of structured information. A database is just a container which is stored data. But a database is usually controlled by a database management system or DBMS. This is a link. If I share the note, you can just visit this link and you'll be able to read more on database management system. This DBMS as a tools or as a software which we are using to control the database. Together with the database and DBMS along with the application that's associated with them are referred to as a database system. So when we're talking about database system, we're talking about a combination of database, DBMS, and the application users which are being connected by either API or data links or anything else, but it's a complete system as shown in the picture below. That is a database. This is a DBMS, which is a software which is used to control the database. And this is the application users and application which are used to connect to the DBMS in order to access the data. We also have some DBMS tools which we are using to interact with the database or to manipulate the data, to change, to manage, or to do anything. In order to change, to manage, or to monitor the database, we use these DBMS tools. I've just listed a few of these DBMS tools which we are using, mostly in the workplace. We're using Todd by Quest, which is this one. I've just put an image of it. If you just Google Todd for Oracle by Quest, it will give you this picture. This tool for Todd, you can download it for Oracle if you are using Oracle database, but also you can just download it Todd for Microsoft SQL if you are using a Microsoft SQL server. But also we are using SQL developer. SQL developer can also be for Oracle database or for other vendors of databases. SQL navigator is also good. DB visualizer, we can use it even for DB2, which is product from IBM, but also the SolarWind. The SolarWind is used to monitor the performance of the database. Are we all together on this? You can just
Yes,
put on chat.
kwa vile nimekupa pia admin, they are member in the waiting room. You can also allow them as they are joining. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Okay, proceed. If you have any question, you can put it on chat, or you can just raise your hand, so it will be easy for me to know if someone has a question. Okay. We continue with the introduction of the database. We have two main types of database, which are relational database. Relational database sometimes is called the SQL database, and also we have non-relational database, which is also referred as NoSQL database. SQL or SQL is the same thing. For this relational database, they are being called the RDBMS because in relational database management systems, the relationship between the data is relational to the data, is stored in tabular form or columns and rows. But also each column of a table represents an attribute and each row in a table represents a record. But also this relational database, they have been called relational because they relate from one field to another field, or from one table to another table. They have a relationship between them. That's why they are called relational database. But also they are presented in terms of columns and rows, so they are in table. But SQL, which is structured query language, is a language used to query RDBMS, including inserting, updating, deleting, and searching records. We said these relational databases are SQL databases. If they are SQL or SQL database, this means the language which is used to manipulate them is SQL. You can use SQL to insert the data, to update, to delete, or to search for any record. In short, these relational databases can be managed or controlled or manipulated or whatever by using SQL language. Relational databases are the most popular and widely used databases. I hope most of us, what we are using on databases, especially on big corporate companies, we are using this relational database, which is RDBMS. Example for RDBMS are Oracle database. Most of Oracle database, almost all, are RDBMS, but also SQL Server, which is Microsoft SQL Server. It's also RDBMS. MySQL, we're using RDBMS, which is a relational database, SQLite, and IBM, which is DB2. All of these examples which I have listed here are relational database, which they are using SQL to manipulate them or to control them. Looking on NoSQL databases, in NoSQL databases, these are the databases which are not using SQL as their primary data access language. So we are not using the SQL language to access or to manipulate the data, to update, to delete, or to do whatever. We are not going to use SQL language. For example, this graph database, network database, object database, and document database are common NoSQL databases. Just saying NoSQL database this database, they doesn't have a specific or predefined schema compared to relational databases. But also these NoSQL databases, they are good when you want to do the rapid changing. You want to change anything on your application or on your database, you are advised to use this NoSQL database. For example, popular NoSQL database is this Cosmos DB, Arangos DB, Couchbase Server, CouchDB, Amazon Document DB, and MongoDB, which most of us, I think, we are very familiar with this MongoDB, Couchbase, Elasticsearch, Informix, and SAP HANA. There are big companies which are using this MongoDB. MongoDB is currently inatumika zaidi sana, but on most of the applications. And this SAP HANA also, it has been used a lot. But this NoSQL databases, they are good when you want to do the rapid changing, but it's not easy to manage them because they are not in a good order. So you have to go a bit deep and to be more competent on how to manage these NoSQL databases such as Mongo and SAP HANA. Okay, let's take a break. Can you list 3 database vendors worldwide? You can just raise your hands. Anyone? Okay, Shabani, you can mute yourself. You can unmute yourself and ask and mention.
Okay, thanks. Sidhani kama nitakuwa nakosea zaidi, ila na idea kidogo. Kwa upande wa vendors naweza nikaongelea labda kuna MySQL.
Okay, MySQL, right?
Microsoft ambao wana Microsoft Access.
Okay.
Also kuna Oracle. Nadhani kama hao.
Yeah, it's very true. Thank you. Anyone else?
I also see some answers in the chat, so you can also refer them.
Pardon, Mr. Matogo?
Yeah, I also see some answers in the chat, so you can also refer them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's true. Oracle, IBM, Postgre. Okay. Then let's proceed. So these are the different database vendors. As most of you have already mentioned, we have PostgreSQL, we have MySQL, we have IBM, which is DB2. We also have Oracle databases, we have SQLite, we have Microsoft SQL Server. Sometimes it's been pronounced as SQL Server, MS SQL Server. But also we have Firebird. Okay, in this picture it doesn't show us our vendors, but we also have vendors like MongoDB, except that it's not a relational database, it's just NoSQL database. And the big one are just Oracle, Microsoft SQL, Postgre, and MySQL, but also IBM DB is very big when you check for the 5 or 10. I mean, if you check the list of 5 out of 6 biggest vendor of database, you find Oracle, you find Postgre, you find Microsoft SQL Server, you find MySQL, you find IBM, and SQLite. On the installation of the database, I'll also like to explain a bit on it. First of all, before you install any database, you need to have an operating system. An operating system can be any of your choice. If you are good on Linux, you can put it on Linux server. And if you're good on Windows or you want to put your database on Windows, you can just put it on Windows server. We're all aware that in Linux server, you can just put a Linux OS, be it a Red Hat, Oracle Linux, CentOS, or any other type of Linux servers. But also on Windows server, you can choose which version you want to put. You can put Windows 2012, you can use Windows Server 2019, and so on. After installing the OS of your choice, you can download the database software from the official website. Why I said you have to download it from the official website? Because when you're going to the official website, they have all their products which are genuine compared to any other site. If you're checking from other sites, you might find out you have to go a long way in order to get that software for the database. But if you're going to the official website, you'll be able to download the version of the database you want. You just need to register yourself in order for them to verify the person is really downloading the software, not the board. Okay. This is a link for Oracle. When I was preparing this note, I was just checking this Oracle 19C link. You can even click it when this note will be shared. You can click the link and it will take you direct to the Oracle database website where you can be able to download this software. For this, it's just a 19C version, but you can just download any versions you want from the Oracle website. I also shared the screen. Once you follow that link, it will give you this interface and you'll have different types of the software you want. If you want to download into a RPM format, you can download it. If you want to download a zip file, you can download a zip file. If you want to download, if you don't want 19 version, you want to lower versions or higher versions such as 21 or 12, you can just go back to the technologies here and it will be able to see other versions of the databases. Okay. Once you already installed, you already download the OS, the database. Once you already download the database software, you'll be able to install it on your either Linux machine or Windows machine. I've shared also this link, which are very useful. For example, this is for Oracle-based link. On this link, you'll be able to see step-by-step installation of the databases. On this year, I was just going specifically on this Oracle Linux 7 because this was the OS I was checking. But you can check for any version of the OS you're using. Even for this one, the other link is installation of Oracle Database 19C on Windows machine. So this one has been shared very insightful step-by-step, and you'll be able to install it. For you all, I could just encourage you just to install virtual machine or VMware on your own lab, on your machine, and you'll be able to practice this by just following this link, the one I shared for database software, and this one for step-by-step installation of the Oracle database on Linux and Windows. You'll eventually be able to install your database machine, your Oracle database machine. Okay, now we have done with database, introduction of the database, installation of the database, type of the database, but also we became aware of the database vendor. I would like to proceed with database security. Okay, now when you are talking about database security, I've been told all of you are on security field. What is security? And when we are talking about database security, which picture do you get on your mind? Anyone who can tell us? You can just speak anything in order to make this interactive. I would like to hear other opinion from you guys.
Yeah, sometimes if they are not speaking, we normally ask the Sierra to volunteer. So Sierra, you can volunteer. What is a database security?
Yes, Sierra. Can volunteer what is database security, or when you heard about database security, which picture do you get on your mind, or unafikiria nini? I see Shabani Kiao raised the hand. Shabani, can you unmute yourself and tell us? Then after you, Sierra will follow.
Okay, thanks madam.
Welcome.
In short, tunapokuwa tunaongelea security kwa feature ya kawaida tunaongelea ulinzi. Sasa katika information kwenye ICT tunaongelea ni kuensure vitu vitatu: CIA, integrity, availability, and confidentiality. So in terms of database, tunaangalia kabisa kwenye database tuhakikishe kuna hivyo vitu vitatu. Je, kuna integrity kwenye database? Je, kuna availability kwenye database? Je, kuna confidentiality katika database? So ndio hivyo navyoelewa katika under database security. Thanks.
Asante sana. Okay, Sierra. We also have two people.
I also see some answers in the chat. Maybe you can also reply.
Okay. We see two people raise their hands. I don't seem to find. Confidentiality and integrity of the database, but also the security can mean ensure basic integrity, availability, and confidentiality of the stored data. Yes. Robert, can you unmute yourself and explain a bit?
Madam Samani, na mimi nahisi sitakuwa mbali sana na wenzangu, ila ni kujazia tu kuhusiana na walichokuwa wakiongea wenzangu.
Okay.
Tunavyoongelea database security au tukianza kwanza na security, in terms of information, cha kwanza inabidi tu ensure au inabidi tuhakikishe vitu vitatu kwenye zile information zetu vipo, kama alivyosema Shabani. Tukianza na confidentiality, kwamba zile information zipo confidential au zimekuwa tu exposed kwa wale watu ambao wamekuwa classified kwa, yani wawe na knowledge ya ile information tu. Lakini tukiongelea integrity ni kwamba ile information haijabadilishwa au ipo katika hali yake ya kuwa original vile vile, kwamba hakuna kilichobadilishwa kutokana na toka since ilivyokuwa imeandikwa, lakini in terms of availability ni kwamba whenever inakuwa inahitajika basi inakuwa ipo available, kwamba hakuna kitu ambacho kitazuia isipatikane wakati inahitajika. Tukija kwenye in terms of database security ni kwamba tuna ensure kwanza data zipo kwenye data zipo ndani ya database yetu, cha kwanza zimetunzwa in terms of confidentiality, kwamba yani anayekuwa na uwezo kuziona ni yule ambaye ana access ya kuziona zile data. Lakini in terms of integrity ni kwamba zitabadilishwa pale endapo tu yule ambaye ana uwezo wa kubadilisha amekuwa classified kubadilisha, lakini na kama availability basi zitapokuwa zinahitajika zile data kutoka kwenye database zitapatikana muda ule unaohitajika na si vinginevyo. Na hisi ni hivyo, nashukuru.
Asante sana, umeelezea vizuri sana. Na wote walioelezea wote mmeelezea vizuri. I see Mohdi. Mohdi, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, madam. Madam?
Yes, Mohdi.
Okay, in my side, I want to try for this database security. Just refer to as the use of a broad range of information security.
Okay.
To protect the database against the compromises of their confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now I can proceed a bit. As you have already explained to yourselves, since you're very good on security, when you're talking about information security, database security, or whatever, we're talking about CIA. So database security refers to the collective measure used to protect and secure a database or this DBMS from illegitimate use and malicious threats and attacks. In this database security, we only protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of an organizational database. As we said, this year, CIA model is being the common model when you talk about security. You cannot talk security or information security without speaking about the CIA. And the CIA model is all about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The confidentiality requires that only authorized users have access to information in order to preserve the privacy of individual, business intellectual properties, and national security efforts. I hope we are very aware that the national policies want the organizational data to be very secured, to be accessed with only people who are authorized. With the growth of social medias and this online business due to the internet, we have to make sure we are maintaining this confidentiality kwa kutumia njia mbalimbali, either be encryption techniques ama kwa kufanya this complex user authorization or identification and authentication procedures. So most of you are very aware on the confidentiality. So confidentiality is all about only authorized users have access to that information. But also when we're talking about the database, we could just add only authorized users have access to information or to the data in order to preserve those privacy of the individual or business intellectual properties and national security efforts. When we're talking about business intellectual properties, we found out we have some banking industry where they have a lot of information about how they are doing business, their profit, the loans of people, and very, very confidential information. So if this information will be accessed with unauthorized users, there will be a lot of chaos and could result to many impact even for the organization to lose its business because people won't trust that organization. For example, let's assume anyone from us having a bank account kwenye benki fulani. Then you find out some people who are not even working on the bank having all the information about your bank account. I mean, the balance you have, if you're taking the loan, most people are knowing that you have a loan, you have took the loan from that bank. Will you be able to trust that bank and to keep on doing business with them? It's obvious no. So we are protecting this information for authorized users only in order also to protect this business intellectual properties and the business name. Also the privacy of individual. If we know that maybe Mr. Matogoro is having or is working 4 or 5B on his account, I know most of us will starting being either chawa or we'll start to blackmail him in order to get some money he has. So the confidentiality is very important and more important when we are talking about the organizational data. The integrity is required that only the authorized users be allowed to modify data, thus maintaining data consistency and trustworthiness. We have said we want the data to be as genuine as they can, right? So we cannot let anyone to modify the data or to just delete the data, to edit anything. We won't have a genuine data. But when we are saying we have to keep when we say we want to keep the integrity of the data, we have to make sure the data are very genuine from the user to the one who is managing it. Authorized user will be allowed to modify the data only because in an organization, we have people who are supposed only to view the data and not to modify or to update anything on the data. For example, those people from teller, when we talk about the banking industry, or people from teller, okay, let's talk about telecom industry, those customer care or customer center, the one which we are calling when we have any problem. They only view your data, but they even the balance of your mobile money account, they are not able to see it because the amount will be a bit encrypted. So they just know, they'll just update your password and they won't see the password because the password also will be encrypted. And you can be all information, including the exact amount you have on you. Few users from from call center who are having the right to see the data. They can even modify, but not on your account. Just don't be curious kwamba hawa watu wanaweza wakaedit on your account, no? They can just view your exact amount you have. So talking about this integrity, we have to make sure only authorized user be allowed to modify the data, and not all authorized user, because can be authorized user who can access the data, but they are not supposed to update anything. Incorrect data can also be harmful to individuals on a credit report and organization, such as a valid financial report. Because if we have each and everyone who can be able to write or to modify the data, at the end of time, this report will be wrong or will be having wrong data. Okay, talking about the availability, it's required that information be accessible by authorized users when needed. Anytime, all the time. That is when we talk about the availability. Security attacks against an organization can cause business service to become unavailable, leading to violation of service level agreements that are critical to business operation. When we talk about this service level agreement, when we work, we are signing some agreement between business partners. For example, let's say we are supporting, maybe I'm working on, we are working with M-Pesa. Working with M-Pesa, we have other business partners which we are working together. For example, they integrate their application or their payment method with M-Pesa, which is Vodacom. If we are going to be unavailable as M-Pesa, means that even the banks or the other business which have been integrated with our payment method will be stuck. So if an attacker puts this denial of services, means the service won't be available, you are good on security. That's I know. When the denial of service attack is happened, can cause the business to be unavailable at the time, right? So when it became unavailable, it will lead to this violation of service level agreement, which we have been put together, or which we have been signed with as a business partners, and also can be critical to the business operation. Because if the M-Pesa, or let me talk about Helpesa, if Helpesa goes down, maybe for 2 hours, we might lose more than 500 millions. Because most of the time and a lot of time you find out people are just doing the transaction. People just send money, as will be receiving the money and take out the cash. So if the service going down for 2 hours, even the organization will lose the business for about 500 millions and above. So we see this important of availability of the data. We need them every time when needed, and all the time is supposed to be there. Okay, so this is just a diagram. This is the data, this is confidentiality, availability, and integrity. Protection from unauthorized access, unauthorized use, and disclosure. Because disclosure, just saying when we have people who are not authorized, when they get access to the data, they can just disclose the data. That's why we see we have a lot of data breaching somewhere. People can just took your data and go to sell them on the dark web. Also, protecting the data residing on the system, in transit, and in process. When you're saying we are protecting the data, doesn't mean only when they are in the database, but also when they are being moved or they have been sent from one point to another point. That is when they said in transit. If you the data from the manager to the seller or to the operation manager, they're supposed also to be protected. So as people who are unauthorized, they didn't supposed to see what the content of the data. But also detect alterations that has occurred in storage, in transit, in processes, and controls ensure authorized access, acceptable level of performance, fault tolerance. We're talking about fault tolerance, redundancy, reliable backup, prevention of data loss or distraction. This is all about the availability. Because we know that if we won't have a fault tolerance, or if we want to have a redundant system or mechanism to duplicate our data somewhere, once our server have been hacked or the data have been breached, the company will left without any data. That's why in order to ensure the availability of the database, we need to have a reliable backup, redundancy, we need to have this fault tolerance, because let's assume not an attacker, but let's say our primary site went down, maybe we have got a fire on our primary site. Does it mean the business supposed to stop? No, the business supposed to continue as nothing has been happened. That's why when we talk about availability, we as organization is supposed to equip itself to have this reliable backup, redundancy, fault tolerance, and also to improve the performance of their system. I hope we're very together on this, and we understand, as most of you will having a clue on this database security. So I've just highlighted and cementing a bit on this. Okay. Robert, you can just unmute yourself and ask if you have any question.
Sorry, madam.
Okay.
There are some questions in the chat. Would like you to answer us?
Okay. Sometimes I won't see the questions on chat on time, but if you have a question, if you just raise your hand, it will be easy for me to know someone is having a question. Okay, what will happen when one of the three CIA would be removed from the database security? For example, let's remove the confidentiality. Okay, let's say we are going to remove anything, the confidentiality. What have we said on confidentiality? Only authorized user supposed to have the access on the information, right? By removing the confidentiality and remaining with integrity and availability, the data will be integrity. We won't have it. How can we have the integrity when we don't have confidentiality? Because anyone can just access the data or the information. If anyone can access the data, means they will find means to update or to modify those data. But also can be able to tamper or to just breach the data. So these three things, I mean, in confidentiality, availability, and integrity, ni mfano wa mafiga, yani mafiga yale ya jiko kwamba if you don't have one, means the stability pia itapungua. You are on a high risk ya kuwa attacked, ya kutokuwa na data integrity, but also utakuwa kwenye good risk ya kutokuwa na availability of the data all the time. Because in order to have the availability of data, you also need to have authorized access only to access the databases. If the unauthorized people can access the database, you want to be able to know who is an attacker, who is doing the data breaching, who is just eavesdrop. I mean, is just spying on you. But also the information it will be the same because people could just take all the information and go to the dark web and sell them. So it will ruin even your business name. So if you remove the confidentiality, the integrity will be tempered, but also the availability will be tempered. Okay, let's say we are just removing the availability. If you remove the availability and you have the confidentiality and the integrity, that's okay, you can sustain because you will have only authorized user access the database, but also data can be modified with only people with the authorized, only authorized users. But in case of any disaster, when we're talking about disaster, we're talking about this moto, mafuriko, or any catastrophe which will happen, which will result maybe your primary data center goes down totally. For example, all the servers zimeingiwa maji, zimeharibika, even the hard disk has been destroyed totally. How will you be able to continue the business without the data? That is when you are talking about the importance of availability. You can survive for some times with this confidentiality and integrity, but for very few time. In case of any changes, for example, we are just updating our system, we are just changing things in our system. If you change anything, you can be able to do the rollback, but there is some situation, there is no rollback. You have to recover from the secondary site to primary site. Maybe you have already distracted everything on the system. So this availability, first of all, it has been recommended with the government policies. In order to run any organization, you need to have a backup plan and a very, very reliable backup plan. Not only a backup plan, you have to back up your data, but also you need to have a secondary site. For example, if your primary site went down, you will be able to connect from the secondary site, and the business is supposed to continue as nothing has happened. Let's assume you are saving the telecom. In telecom industry, you might find out people are having about 5 million subscribers, or more than 5 million subscribers. If you're saving 5 million subscribers which are using your services, let's assume you're going down and you don't know how to recover yourself. Let's assume all of us now, if the subscriber, if the telecom company or the internet service provider went down now and they don't have means to recover themselves, will you even be able to continue on this presentation or this session? It won't be possible. So for those people who want to maybe to communicate, maybe they have patients, they have very critical situations they were discussing through the phones, all the communication will be down, and we want to be able to know when we'll be back, because even the organization doesn't have a backup plan. So you see, as a business or an organization to keep on growing, we need this. There is a thing called BCP, Business Continuity Plan. A business continuity plan, this is recommended in each and every organization. You need to have a plan in case of any failure, in case of any attack, in case of any emergency, you'll be able to continue the business as it's supposed to be. I'm not sure if I've answered it well, very clearly, or I need to explain more on it. Okay, a database security simply can be secured but cannot be available. For ensuring availability, distributed computing can ensure that. Okay. Ensure availability in database security. Let me answer this. In order to ensure the availability in the database security, first of all, in database system, we are having a single node and multiple node architecture, but also we have high availability architecture. In database, we know that the database has been the heart of every application to run. Each application is dependent on the database. If the database is not up, no application will be able to run, because they have to connect to the database in order to run successful. So on the database, we have these things called single node and multiple node. Single node is only one node, one server and one node for the database. But when we're talking about multiple node, we are running more than 2 nodes or more than 1 node. It can be 2 nodes, 3 or 5 or 6 or whatever, as much as you want to put the node. You can put 3 nodes per one application or per one database. So your database will just be doing the synchronization and mirroring from all the nodes. For example, you just edit, your application will be connected to virtual IP, and the virtual IP will be connected from this 3 node. So in case one node goes down, second node and third node will keep on working fine. So the application won't notice anything. So the user also cannot notice anything if the application is going down. Only the DBA will be able to know that one node is down and can be able to resolve it without affecting anything to the application. On the, I will explain it on the later, slides. I'll show you. But when we reach out, I have explained about this availability, high availability, but also I've put some diagram you'll be able to understand well, because one of the things we have to do the high availability of the database. Redundancy is the same as what I was just talking about. In high availability, I'll just show you exactly what is that. Okay. Let's proceed. About the database attacks that a developer needs to be aware of, you just see we have SQL injection. We also have denial of service. We have a lot of them, you just see them. Okay, these are the most common database vulnerabilities. I just put as vulnerabilities because when you have poor encryption and you're expecting more on having those data breach, but also SQL injection, this is most common. Also the audit trail tracking. If the audit trail tracking is not configured well, you will not be able to see what is going on your databases, who has accessed the database, who has modified what, when, and how. But also, we can just talk about database backup. If the backup is not reliable and is not well configured, you are in a high risk, because if an attacker gets access to your database, would be able to delete everything. You want to be able to restore or to recover from anywhere, and obviously you'll be with data unavailability, which is also not good. But also we have this denial of services. Most of the attackers, they keep this denial of services in order to finalize their task. But also we have this missing security patches. These database vendors, they keep on releasing patches after some time. Once they release the security patches, they highlight what is they highlight it from the previous patches, what was missing, what was the vulnerability. So the attacker use those patches which have been highlighted they use those vulnerability to attack the system which are using those versions of database. So if you are missing the security patches, you'll be in very high risk of being attacked. But also we are saying we have these poor users and good privilege management. Not all the attack or the database security are coming from the outsiders. Some are coming from the internal. For example, when you have this privilege management which is poor. For example, people are supposed to see only this, you have this group of privileges. You have put the privilege of people. For example, you want the student. You create a group for student and you assign a certain privilege. If you want to be good on managing those privileges, you might find out you have assigned a teacher privilege to a student. And by doing that, you give access to a student who's having a teacher privilege to modify or even to update the information on his account or on other student account. So this is also a vulnerability. But also we have these poor password resources. When we talk about these poor password resources, we're talking about a password of a user doesn't suppose to include a username, doesn't suppose to include the password does not suppose to allow a user to repeat his or her password, which has been used even for 4 times. It's supposed to be that. But also the complexity of the password, minimum length, and other things. SQL injection, okay. Okay, Robert, you can just unmute yourself.
Sorry, madam. I have a question.
Okay, karibu.
Kwenye slide iliyopita pale nimeona kuna kitu umeelezea kinaitwa audit trail tracking.
Okay.
Sasa mimi nataka kupata maelezo zaidi kuhusiana na hii audit trail tracking, kwamba inatumikaje kama vulnerability au inakuwaje kama attack.
Okay. Hii inakuwa ni vulnerability if it's not well managed. For example, in this audit trail tracking, you can track all activities the user is doing on the database. If an authorized user trying to access your database, you'll be able to see. But also, you'll be able to see even people which are authorized. If they're trying to view tables which are very sensitive, you'll see. For example, in industry, we have maybe the table for bank. We also have a table for maybe transaction tables, but also we have maybe the salary tables, each and one salary. One salary. It's not safe and it's not advised for people to view someone's salary because it could bring a lot of confusion. So for those tables, most of the time we're enabling the audit and we configure notification. If anyone is trying to view that table or the table for transaction or for bank, you'll be able to view, you just see what the person has been doing. Even the command has been used. If we say select, you just see categories select and you see the exact SQL which has been used. If the person who was trying to update that table, you just see someone trying to update the table. So if a DBA won't manage this audit trail, won't be able to know who has gained an access to the database, but also won't be able to know if someone has having more permission or privilege than is supposed to be, but also won't be able to ensure the integrity of the database, because you might find out someone has modified the information, but the DBA doesn't understand.
Nimekuelewa madam, nashukuru.
Karibu. Okay. How may I know that database has been compromised with either SQL injection? Okay, let me say that SQL injection can only be used in order to get those backend information such as username and password. In real environment, if we are using the Oracle database, if you are using Microsoft database, even this SQL injection can be managed very, very well. First of all, in organization or in real case environment, we are not allowing application to put a query to the database, and we are not allowed directly login to the database from different users. What we did, we put the authentication from the application side, and once I've been authenticated on the application side, only application schema will be able to connect to the databases. And also, we have come up, there is this system or this application which are using Oracle Forms and Report, or also we have other applications which are using Forms and Report. So we are not allowing a user to see a query from the front end or to insert a query from a front end. What we put, we are creating form by using a third-party application, and we embed a form to the application server. So that form or a report, first of all, it doesn't come from a one table. We are creating something called the view. That view can be a combination of columns and rows from different tables. Can even have 10 tables or more than 10 tables or 2 tables. We just put a column we want First of all, we are just collecting requirement from the application users, which they want to see from that form or from that report. Then we create a query from the backend, but also we are using view in the form, and we embed a form to the database server. So even if you use SQL injection, you just end up on application server and you won't get access to the database server. I was just answering the question of someone who asked, how may I know that the database have been compromised with SQL injection? Okay, in case of SQL injection, in case if it has been successful to penetrate to the database, because I know we are preventing it from to penetrate to the database by just putting those different architecture or different means which the attacker are not aware, because most of you people who are just studying security, we just think that the application is very open as web-based. Not all applications, especially core applications, most are not web-based. They're just middleware architecture. The middleware architecture is a combination of a web-based, a Java, a WebLogic, and other more application, but also they can connect to the database. So it's a bit different. And other things, we are using two nodes. We are not putting database node and the application. We're not putting database and application on single node. We are putting on different server. So if you get access to the application, just end up on an application server, and you have to find another means for you to connect from application server to the database server. Okay, what if this audit trail goes down? Is there any other means to know this abuse access? Yes, you can just put audit trail on, but also we are using other tools such as Oracle Vault, which is a database file. So it will track each and everything, even if the audit trail goes down. In the working industry, ama katika mazingira ya kazi, especially this big corporate industry, banking, telecom, and big industry, they know that there are Can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay. So just saying, this big corporate company, people are trying to attack them or to enter on their system. So we are not using one means of security or filtering. So by having this, first of all, I'm just talking about database, but in order to secure a database, you need to secure from the physical security, such as the people who can get access to a machine, but also you have to secure the network. You have to put the firewall for the network side only. Then you have to secure each and everything, including the access of the people. If I have been joined to the domain, can be able to connect to this one. I could just tell you one example from one of my organization. You have to close 4 firewall in order to connect to the server. Just 4 firewall in order to connect to the server. Then once you reach there, you'll find out there is a lot of these SIEMs application, which will also detect you. But also we have those NAC, which are called the NAC, which are also network firewall, they will detect you. But also from there, you are going to face the server security. We have this issue called the IP tables, server firewall also will be enabled and IP tables will be enabled. So in order for you to read the data, you have to close a lot. Okay. So I think I've answered this question. If audit trace goes down, is there any other means to know this abuse access? Yes, there is many other means to know. Okay, let's check this method to secure a database. This which have been bolded as a main main methods which we are using to secure database, and those which are not highlighted as a supportive method to secure a database. First one is avoid using default port. We are all aware that by using a default port, each attacker is aware of the default port. For example, right now, if I ask you the default port for HTTP, you all know. For HTTPS, you all know, right? But also using firewall, this firewall, but also using transactional logs. Everything which can be done on the database can be monitored, be it from the database itself or from supportive tools itself. So even if you just switch off this transactional log, you just switch off this audit trail, if the company has invested on security, they must have other third-party systems which are monitoring the database. But let me add this to you. Once you are doing anything, once you want to attack anything, you have to think out of the box. We don't have one node for database or for application server. We have multiple nodes. So once you are trying to switch off on the first node on the different server, it will detect you, and it have a different system. So it will detect you by any means, because once you are just trying to delete on primary server or from one node, but we are having 3 nodes which are connected, or they're just doing synchronization, and even the backup we are not using on the first node, we're using on the standby node. So we just see it. Okay, let me proceed. We avoid using default port, using firewall, using separate servers, use authentication, database access control, database auditing, encryption, backups, apps, and database up to date. When we talk about this default database port, each database, it has its own default port. If a DBA install database using default port, made an attacker task is, because once the attacker scans the network, will identify the database running on that machine. I know most of you are using Nmap for scanning on Kali Linux. As one of the methods to secure a database, a DBA should avoid using these default ports. For example, these are the default port for Microsoft. This MS SQL is Microsoft SQL. The default port for Microsoft SQL is either 1433, 4022, 135, and 1434. So if someone scans the network and finds this port, this has a combination of TCP and UDP. This 1434 is for UDP, 1433 is for TCP, and 4022 is for TCP, 135 is also for TCP. So if an attacker scans the network and finds this port, obviously an attacker will know, okay, this port, this is Microsoft SQL. So you just made an attacker task easier to know, oh, in this machine there is a Microsoft SQL server is running. But also the default port for Oracle is 1521. So if you scan a network and find 1521, you just know there's, okay, there is Oracle database running. 3306 is for MySQL, PostgreSQL is 5432, and 27017 is for MongoDB. This is sample of Nmap output. In this Nmap, you just see here we have 3306. You know that there is MySQL, but also we have 5432. You know that there is Postgre running on this machine. So by just seeing this default port, you just know, or an attacker will just know exactly, okay, in this machine, there is 123 is running. For HTTP, you see this person was using default port, including on the web. He was using HTTP. You see, it's having 8. But also, if you check for here, you find for MySQL is open. Also, for Postgre is open. But if you change from the default port and put a different port, maybe, for example, for Postgre, instead of putting 5432, you can even put 5460. So even if the person scan won't know exactly what is this, he has to struggle a bit to find out what is this machine running or which this port is opening. But once you use a default, it will be easy for attacker to know. But also using firewalls. This firewall I was just talking about, not the network firewall. You have to close all those network firewall. Then on the database machine, if it's Linux, you have to use firewall. Firewall can be used in order to allow only allowed range of IP address to connect to the database server. For example, in Linux server firewall can be enabled and use IP table to allow only few IP range to connect. Not all people. Okay. Not all people from the organization are supposed to connect to the database server. We only have to allow a certain IP to connect to the database server. For example, we are having maybe 200 staffs, but only 2 people from IT department are supposed to connect to that server. So we are giving access to only those 2 people by just allowing their IP on the IP table. I'm very sure you are aware of this IP table. You can just Google and check how IP table are working on Linux. But also by allowing firewall, if this firewall are active, even if I'll just switch it on, even the application won't be able to be available on the website. If you just put the URL on the browser, it will just tell you that's not available because I've just allowed only IP from the internal to connect. So if you're having an IP for application, you have also to put on the IP on the allowed range. I mean, you have also to put on the range of the IP which are allowed to connect. So by using this firewall also, you can reduce the risk of being attacked or your machine to be reached by these attackers. But also we are saying we have to use separate servers. For secure database system, it's better to separate database server with application server. This will increase data security and improve performance. Once an attacker gets access to application server, I want to be able to harm database server. And if the attacker gets, and vice versa, I mean, if the attacker gets access to the database server, I want to be able to tamper anything on the application server. But when we are using a single node application and database, both database and application could be harmed or destroyed by an attacker. Because once the attacker already gets the access for one, it will be for all. But also in high availability of services, multiple nodes are installed on different servers, and application is configured only to point to the virtual IP. Once attacker gets access to one node, DBA could easily disconnect the server, but application and business won't notice any changes. This is when we talk about high availability. We are running more than one node for the database. When I'm talking about node, I'm talking about different server. Okay. I'll answer this for reverse TCP. I was just talking about this high availability. When I talk about node, I mean we are having maybe 4 servers which are having the same database node, and they have been configured to connect to one virtual IP. So the application and all other things will be connecting to the virtual IP. So if the attacker gets access to that virtual IP, that won't be a physical server, so won't be able to connect. I mean, you won't be able to harm anything because it's not the virtual server. It's not a physical server. It is just a virtual IP which is being configured. But also, if the attacker gets access to the physical server, for one physical server and try to tamper it, the DBA once notice could be able to switch it even off without without business or application to notice any changes, because other 3 nodes or 4 nodes will be able to send to operate as normal. But also we have this user authentication. Users can be authenticated in a number of different ways before they are allowed to create a database session. In database authentication, you can define users such that the database performs both identification and authentication of user. In external authentication, you can define user such that authentication is performed by the operating system or network services. Alternatively, you can define user such that they are authenticated by secure socket layer. That is where I was told you kwamba nowadays we are not allowing application user to connect direct to the database. We are only we only put authentication on the application side, and then the application side will just only the application schema will be able to connect it with the database and return those information to those users. So it's how you define how users will be authenticated. But also we're saying password as one of the basic form of authentication. A user must provide the correct password when establishing a connection to prevent unauthorized use of the database. In this way, user attempting to connect to a database can be authenticating by using information stored in that database. Password assigned when users are created. A database can store user password in the data dictionary in an encrypted format. Kwa kuongezea hapa, kuna kitu tunakiita user profile. Katika ile profile, we are putting limits for the database resources. For example, we're even putting the complexity of the database, how complex it's supposed to be. But also we are putting those trials in case of login, failed login, how many times the person is supposed to log in. If it's 1 time, 2nd time, 3rd time the account is being logged in. But also after how many idle days, if an account has been idle, not used for 5 days maybe, or for 3 days, the account is supposed to log. But also when changing the password, the repetition of the password, if you have been using the password this time, you're not allowed to use it up to 4 times. Then you change it 1st time, you change the 2nd time, you change the 3rd time, and the 4th time, then you'll be able to repeat. But also after how many days the password will be expired. So those are the things which you have been on the user profile. This is a useful link you can just click in order to check this authentication of the user. Most of the link I shared on Oracle database and Microsoft. Since as a databases which have been managed for a long time, I couldn't share more on my SQL because I'm not managing it most of the time. I just use it on my personal lab. Okay, this has a number of steps can be strengthened. The password features and provide user control as a database security. Here I said password management policy can be controlled of time. When a particular user exceeded the designated number of failed login attempts, the server can automatically lock that user. So by just seeing this, some of the policies which can be put on the user authentication, We just see if someone is trying to okay. So we see this as some of the policy which we have been used to authenticate the user, and all these policies will be audited with these auditors. We all know, I mean, if you didn't know, then let me tell you, in organization, we are having two kind of auditors. So for each quarter, we have been audited with external auditors and internal auditors. So one among the things or features which these auditors, they are checking is this user authentication. They're checking about all the password configuration or management policies, if have been followed, and if have been controlled, and everything they keep on checking. Okay, so this is just a snapshot on password resources. This was just an example, not the real one. It's the real one, but these limits are not have been changed. On the production, you cannot put this limit. For example, is this one for failed login? Hold on. For this failed login attempt, the limit is 10, but on production, you can just put 5 or 3, not maximum than 5. But also this password lifetime, we put 30 on production, not 180. This 180 is default. 180, it means you will stay for 6 months without changing the password. But normally we have to put 30, which is 30 days. This 180 is the number of days. And this failed login attempt is this 10 is the 10 times you times to login.